Picture this: gaudy studio lights, a chirpy 1970s theme tune, and millions of viewers laughing along as a bachelorette asks three hidden men flirtatious questions. Bachelor number one saunters out, handsome, charming, a self-described photographer with a disarming smile. On screen, he's a joke. Off screen, he's a predator. 2 weeks before that wink to the camera, he had murdered a young woman. She picked him anyway. She almost died. Stay with me. In the next 15 minutes, you'll hear how Rodney Alcala hid a trail of victims beneath a camera lens, paraded on national TV, and kept a macabre photo album that still refuses to tell all its names. September 13th, 1978. Millions of Americans are sitting in their living rooms, tuned into the hit television show, The Dating Game. The premise is simple. A beautiful bachelorette sits on one side of a partition, asking playful, flirtatious questions to three eligible bachelors hidden on the other side. At the end of the show, she chooses one to take on an all-expenses-paid romantic getaway. On this particular episode, the bachelorette is Cheryl Bradshaw, a lovely drama teacher looking for romance. And sitting on the other side of the wall is bachelor number one. The host, Jim Lang, introduces him to the audience. He describes bachelor number one as a successful photographer who got his start when his father found him in the darkroom at the age of 13, fully developed. The audience laughs. He's charming. He rides motorcycles. He skydives. He is exactly the kind of man a 1970s woman was supposed to want. But as the studio audience claps and the cameras roll, nobody in the room, not the host, not the producers, and certainly not Cheryl Bradshaw, knows the terrifying truth. Bachelor number one is Rodney Alcala, and just weeks before sitting under these bright studio lights, he had brutally murdered a young woman. He was an active, ruthless serial killer, and he was currently hunting for his next victim on national television. This is the chilling story of how one of America's most prolific and sadistic predators slipped through the cracks of the justice system, hid in plain sight, and turned a harmless game show into a real-life horror movie. To understand how a monster ends up on live television, we have to look at the mask he wore. Rodney Alcala was not your stereotypical, socially awkward outcast. He was highly intelligent, boasting an IQ of 170. He was handsome, articulate, and possessed a magnetic charm that he used to disarm everyone around him. But beneath that charm was a profound darkness. In 1968, a decade before his TV appearance, Alcala committed a crime that should have put him behind bars for life. He lured an 8-year-old girl named Tali Shapiro into his Hollywood apartment. A motorist saw the kidnapping and called the police. When officers kicked down Alcala's door, they found the girl brutally beaten and assaulted. But Alcala? He had slipped out the back door. He fled to New York, changed his name to John Berger, and enrolled at New York University's film school. In a bizarre twist of fate, he even studied under the famous director Roman Polanski. Alcala blended in perfectly with the bohemian artistic crowd of the late 60s. He was eventually recognized by two children who saw his face on an FBI Most Wanted poster. He was arrested and extradited back to California. This is where the justice system committed a fatal error. Because the parents of the 8-year-old victim didn't want to put their daughter through the trauma of a trial, the prosecution offered Alcala a plea deal. The charges were reduced. Instead of a life sentence, this violent predator served just 34 months in prison. By 1974, Rodney Alcala was a free man, and he was ready to hunt. The 1970s in Southern California was an era of immense freedom. Hitchhiking was common. Trusting strangers was the norm. It was the perfect hunting ground for a predator. Alcala had a foolproof method for luring victims. He carried a camera. He would approach young, beautiful women on the beach, at parks, or on the street, and introduce himself as a professional fashion photographer. He would compliment them, tell them they had the perfect look for a magazine spread, and ask to take their picture. In a society obsessed with fame and beauty, the camera was the ultimate weapon. It granted him instant trust and access. Between 1977 and 1979, a wave of terror swept across the country. Women were vanishing. There was Cornelia Crilly, a flight attendant found dead in her New York apartment. Ellen Hover, a young woman whose remains were found in the woods. Jill Barcombe, an 18-year-old who had just moved to Los Angeles. Georgia Wickstead, Charlotte Lamb. Alcala's methods were unspeakably cruel. Detectives later discovered that he didn't just kill his victims, he played God. He would strangle them until they lost consciousness, wait for them to wake up, and then strangle them again. He dragged out their final moments for his own twisted gratification. And yet, despite leaving a trail of bodies across multiple states, Alcala remained off the police's radar. He was a chameleon. He worked as a typesetter for the Los Angeles Times. He had friends. He dated. And in the late summer of 1978, he decided he wanted to be on television. When Rodney Alcala applied to be on The Dating Game, the producers didn't do a background check. In 1978, criminal databases weren't digitized or connected. If you seemed normal in the interview, you got on the show. And Alcala was great on camera. Let's go back to that September broadcast. Cheryl Bradshaw, the Bachelorette, begins asking her questions. Cheryl asks Bachelor number 1, "What are you called? And what do you look like?" Alcala leans into the microphone. His voice is smooth, but there is a strange, predatory cadence to it. "I'm called the Banana," he says, "and I look good." Cheryl plays along. "Can I peel you?" she asks. Alcala smiles. "I will let you peel me. Wonderfully." The audience is roaring with laughter. It's 1970s television. Sexual innuendos are the name of the game. But watching this footage today, knowing what we know, it is absolutely bone-chilling. At one point, Cheryl asks the bachelors to describe themselves as a meal. Alcala's answer, "I'm a roast, and I'm very hungry." He is sitting there, a man who has literally hunted, tortured, and murdered women, making jokes about his hunger on national television. He is mocking the world. He is hiding his monstrous reality behind the thin veil of a television persona. At the end of the episode, Jim Lang asks Cheryl to make her choice. She chooses Bachelor number 1. She chooses Rodney Alcala. Alcala walks out from behind the partition. He kisses Cheryl's hand. They are awarded tennis lessons and a trip to the famous Magic Mountain amusement park. But this is where the story takes a miraculous turn. After the cameras stopped rolling, Cheryl and Rodney met backstage to discuss their upcoming date. And immediately, Cheryl's instincts kicked in. She later told investigators that the moment she spoke to him without the cameras around, his entire demeanor changed. The charismatic Bachelor number 1 vanished. In his place was a man who was cold, intense, and deeply unsettling. Cheryl felt a knot in her stomach, a primal warning. She called the show's producer, Ellen Metzger, and said, "I can't go out with this guy. There's weird vibes that are coming off of him. He's very strange. I am not comfortable." The producer thankfully listened. She told Cheryl she didn't have to go on the date. Cheryl Bradshaw's intuition saved her life. Had she gone on that date, there is almost no doubt she would have become another name on Rodney Alcala's long list of victims. Being rejected by Cheryl didn't stop Alcala. In fact, his crimes only escalated. In June 1979, a 12-year-old girl named Robin Samso was riding her bike to ballet class in Huntington Beach, California. She never made it. A friend of Robin's told police that a strange man had approached them on the beach earlier, asking to take their picture. The police sketch generated from the friend's description looked eerily familiar to Alcala's parole officer. Finally, the walls were closing in. Police arrested Alcala and executed a search warrant on a storage locker he rented in Seattle. What they found inside was the stuff of nightmares. Inside the locker, detectives found a pair of gold ball earrings. They belonged to 12-year-old Robin Samso. But that wasn't all. They found a macabre trophy collection, hundreds of pieces of jewelry belonging to unknown women. And most chilling of all, over 1,000 photographs, pictures of women, teenage girls, and young boys. Some were fully clothed, posing happily, unaware of the danger they were in. Others were in states of undress or unconscious. It was a visual diary of a serial predator. Alcala was put on trial for the murder of Robin Samsoe. But the trial was an absolute circus. Because of his massive ego, Alcala fired his public defenders and decided to represent himself. Imagine the psychological torture for the victims' families. Alcala, the man who murdered their loved ones, was pacing the courtroom, acting as a lawyer. He even put himself on the witness stand. He would ask himself a question in a deep, professional voice. "Mr. Alcala, where were you on the day of the murder?" And then he would change his voice, look at the jury, and answer his own question. It was a bizarre, terrifying display of a psychopath who believed he was smarter than everyone else in the room. He even cross-examined the mother of 12-year-old Robin Samsoe, forcing her to endure his presence as he coldly questioned her about her dead daughter. But his arrogance couldn't save him. The jury saw right through the act. He was found guilty and sentenced to death. Due to legal technicalities, his conviction was overturned twice, leading to 3 separate trials over the decades. But in 2010, aided by new DNA technology that linked him to several other cold cases, Rodney Alcala was definitively sentenced to death. Rodney Alcala died of natural causes in prison in July 2021 at the age of 77. He took the true number of his victims to the grave. While he was convicted of 7 murders, detectives believe his actual body count could be anywhere from 50 to 130 victims. In 2010, the Huntington Beach Police Department did something unprecedented. They released over 100 of the photographs found in Alcala's storage locker to the public, hoping to identify the women in the pictures. Some of the women in the photos came forward alive and well, stating they just thought he was a creepy photographer and walked away. But many of the women in these photos have never been identified. Their fates remain a mystery, locked away in the dark history of the dating game killer. The story of Rodney Alcala is a terrifying reminder of how easily evil can hide in plain sight. We are conditioned to believe that monsters lurk in dark alleyways, wearing masks, hiding in the shadows. But sometimes, the monster is well-dressed. Sometimes he has a charming smile, a camera around his neck, and a joke on his lips. And sometimes he's sitting right in front of us, under the bright lights of national television, waiting for his turn to speak. Thank you for watching. If you found this story as chilling as we did, please hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a deep dive into the darker side of history. What do you think is the creepiest part of Alcala's TV appearance? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe out there.